everybody happy. Everyone's going to be happy with what you've done because waffles are delicious. I mean, it's like a waffle is a pancake on steroids. A waffle is... Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm here to do a video on how to make sourdough waffles. So when the pandemic hit, I noticed online that there was a proliferation of videos on how to make sourdough bread. And I can make a video on how to make sourdough bread if people are interested, but I think there's plenty out there. Anyway, if you want that, I'll do it. But there's other things you can do with the sourdough starter. And I think you'll find once you've established a sourdough starter that you have to use it to do things. Once a week you should do something with your sourdough starter. And I have found that sourdough waffles are a great way to do it. And another great thing about sourdough waffles is that you can make them, if you're a poor sucker like me who's lactose intolerant, you can make delicious sourdough waffles that don't involve the use of any milk. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. If you really want me to show you how to make sourdough bread, just put a comment in the comment section. If there's enough comments, enough interest, I'll do it. So, if you are a sourdough person and you've got a sourdough starter, there's lots of different ways to do it, and I'm not going to talk about how I got mine established, but I've got sourdough starter. So once a week, you take your sourdough and you take some of it out and use it to make something, and you feed the mother, as they call it. So once a week I take half a cup out of this container, and I put half a cup of, for me, I use rye flour. I put half a cup of rye flour, half a cup of water in here, mix it around a bit, change containers, put it back in the fridge, and then I use it the next week. And that's how I maintain my sourdough starter. And my sourdough starter, for people that were interested, was started using rye flour because from everything I've read and my understanding of how this works, rye flour makes just a fantastic starter, and I have to say the bread, everything I make with this tastes great, so I'm inclined to agree. And again, if you're interested to know how I got my sourdough starter established, just put a comment in the video, maybe I'll make a video about that. But today, it's all about the waffles. So I'm showing you how to make a waffle recipe using, I got a Belgian waffle maker. I think the size of it, the diameter is about 6.5 inches wide, but they're the Belgian waffle style. So you're going to have to adjust things relative to your style. This recipe makes enough to feed 4 people who are reasonably hungry. Okay, my kids are always hungry. I'm always hungry. My wife is modestly hungry. So what have I got here? This is what they call a sponge. So about 6 hours ago, this is the sort of thing I do in the evening. At night before I go to bed, I mix this up and go to bed. In the morning, it's ready to make the waffles. So at night, what I do is I take a good half cup, right, 120 milliliters of starter out of the starter container, put it in a bowl, and I put in 2 cups of water, 2 cups of flour, and I leave it on the counter overnight and go to bed. That's all I do. So that's where we are now. We got this sort of fizzy, foamy, smelly stuff, right? Sourdough starter. So that's what they call a sponge, right? And it's been, I don't know, at least 6 hours. I would say at least 6 hours, but the simplest way to do it is to mix it up before you go to bed so it's ready for breakfast, because that's when you want your waffles. Now, the ingredients for this recipe are 2 cups of starter, a half a cup of flour, 2 eggs, half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of sugar, a third of a cup of oil, half a cup of milk. I'm going to use this rice milk because I'm one of these poor fools who's lactose intolerant, but if you're not, if you have the advantage of being able to digest that, just use regular milk. All right, that's the recipe. All right, so the first step is to mix up our dry ingredients. So we're going to put a half a cup of flour in here. Half a cup of flour. And we're going to mix up all our dry stuffs here. So half a cup of flour, one teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of sugar. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't have to be perfect. Half a teaspoon of baking soda. All right, that's all you need. That's all the rise you need. Half a teaspoon of baking soda. All right. Okay, that's all the dry. Now we'll just take a little fork, mix that around. All right. So that it's all, randomized. All right, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and half a cup of flour. All right, there we go. Now to that, we're going to add 2 eggs. 1, 2. Oh, shoot. Doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Never mind, that's fine. Sorry. 2 eggs, half a cup of milk, and if you want, I didn't include this in the ingredients, but I think it's nice. You could put a teaspoon of vanilla in there as well, because vanilla is nice. All right, so now you're going to stab the egg yolks and just mix that up. All right, mix it up until it's all one thing. All right, doesn't take long. Just using a fork here, nothing fancy. Fork in a bowl. So I'm just mixing until I see everything combined. Doesn't take long at all. Now I'm surprised at the equipment people tend to use in recipes when the simplest tools are needed, like a fork. And there's something pleasant I find about using a fork for stuff. Okay, so I think it's all combined. All I can see is a yellow sort of pudding-like, stuff here. So, we're ready to go. Now, the one thing we're missing is in terms of wet ingredients, is 1/3 cup of oil. That'll just give it that rich, nice, basically you're making a cake. That's what this is, it's a cake. So like any cake recipe, you got flour and you've got oil. Okay, so now we got 2 different things. We're going to combine those until they look like one thing. Oil and all that other stuff. The dry and the wet, excluding the sourdough. So the only thing we haven't added to this yet is the sourdough. And you want to add that last because there's a reaction, right? The baking soda is alkaline, the sourdough is acidic. Once they combine, they start making bubbles. And the bubbles are what make your waffles fantastic. All right, we got that. Now, we're going to add 2 cups of the starter. Okay, I've been making this for years. All right, so I'm just going to randomize this a little bit. I'm using a half cup here because that's what I've used for the whole thing. I'm trying to cut down the amount of dishes I have to wash. So I'm going to put 2 cups, which is 4 half cups. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And because there's a little bit sticking to the cup, I'm just going to put like a little bit extra in there just to be like a tablespoon extra, just to account for the amount of starter that's still attached to the cup. So I still have some left in here, right? We use this to make sourdough bread. I'm going to make a loaf of that too later on this evening, although I'm not going to film this because there's a lot of stages and I've got a family and kids and the house gets crazy and it's hard to film stuff when there's people around, people knocking about. Okay, so we've got that. Now we've got everything in there that we need to make the waffles. It's very wet. So the next step is to combine the starter with the egg and the flour and the baking soda and the oil and the sugar and the salt and, you know, all the vanilla, right? Everything. So again, you're just stirring this. You don't need a special machine for this. You need a fork and your arm. And it only takes it takes a few minutes. I'm just going to move this around until it's all one thing. I have to say these are just, I mean, we make pancakes from scratch. I make them a different way. And we make sourdough waffles from scratch. I like the waffles more than the pancakes. The waffles, there's something about the heat and the design of a waffle, and, you know, it's just fantastic. All right, so that's all combined. All right, so now you've mixed that. You want to let it sit for about 5 minutes, okay? So while that's sitting, you get the table set, you make your coffee, you put the syrup out, you do all the other stuff you'd normally do in the morning, okay? We'll be back in 5 minutes, okay? All right, so we're back here. We got the waffle maker going, and this is the process. You just open it up. This waffle maker is about 7 years old. It's Teflon. I find Teflon doesn't last over time, so I got a little bit of this, you know, fake vegan butter because I can't have real butter. So I just use a little baster thing, and I put a little bit. And I find the first couple batches with the older Teflon, it just doesn't. Teflon does not stand up the way cast iron does. So I used to have a cast iron maker, but my wife didn't like it. I loved it. Anyway, we got rid of that, and that's totally another topic. So you use a 1/2 cup measure, and you dip it into the waffle mix, okay? And you let it rip. Don't worry about getting every single drop out of the, for a waffle maker of this size, if you try to get every single drop out of the cup, you'll have too much in there. You put it in there, close her down. This is on the highest setting this waffle maker has. Then you count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you flip it over. This one's got, this is a 2-sided waffle maker, okay? This thing costs maybe 30 bucks. You know, give her another lick of the oil. Again, you don't have to, you've got a lot of oil in the waffle, so you don't have to do this every time, but I find the first couple waffles, it prevents them from sticking. So again, we scoop this out as level as we can get it. We dump her in right in the center, give it a couple taps, but don't worry about getting every single thing, every single drop out of the 1/2 cup. Give it a little shake, give it a close, count to 10. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give her a flip, okay? Now, you're gonna make note of the time. It's 1:18 p.m. in the afternoon, so I'm gonna let this go for 4 minutes, and I'll give it a check after 4 minutes. So we'll see you in 4 minutes, okay? All right, so 4 minutes has gone by. I just checked it. I decided it needed another minute. I mean, this is one of these things you just have to figure out for yourself and play around. I always find the first waffle takes a little bit longer than the remaining waffles. It seems to take a little less time with every waffle. So now the clock just turned to 1:23, so it's been somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes. So I'll pop it up, and it's golden brown, and it popped right out just the way you want. So I'm going to put that on a rack. Flip to the other side. Comes right out. I probably don't need to brush this for the second one, so let's just do that. We'll just put it in the way it is, right? Again, don't go crazy trying to get every single thing out of the 1/2 cup measure. That's 1/2 cup for a 6.5 diameter Belgian waffle maker. We're going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think my fingers didn't match my numbers. All right, flip it. That way it just gets both sides, you know, it gets the heat applied to both sides. I'm going to do that over here. Get as level as we can coming out of the bowl, but then we don't go crazy trying to get it out. There's still some stuff, right? There's still some stuff left in here. Don't worry about that. If you get every single drop out of the 1/2 cup measure, it's going to boil over and you're going to make a mess. If you've ever made waffles, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now we're doing a little count. I think we're probably at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Flip. clock's at 124. I'm going to check this at 128. I always use 4 minutes as a gauge. Always check it at 4 minutes. Maybe it needs another 30 seconds, that sort of thing. If it wants to come out, see how it's starting to come out there, right? Just flip it over. If it looks like it is trying to go over, because you're not being exact here. So if it starts to spill, just flip it very quickly. See the pressure, right? That's just the baking soda reacting with the acidity of the sourdough, creating lift, right? That's just fantastic stuff. And you wouldn't believe what the house smells like right now. It smells like candy. It smells like, you know what these taste like? They taste like, if you've ever had, 1,000 years ago when people used to go out and buy things to eat and you could do stuff like that, you could get ice cream. You get an ice cream cone, but you could also get this thing called a waffle cone. This tastes almost exactly like a waffle cone. It's so good. There is no recipe for waffles that I've ever found that works as well. And this is, honestly, I don't normally take credit for things, but this is just my using various recipes for sourdough waffles, figuring around with the proportions, and trying to get it right. If you put too much baking soda in, it's bitter, right? And if you put too much flour in, it's doughy. And if you put too much oil in, it's gluey. All these little, and too much salt, it's salty, too much sugar, it burns. All these different things, right? I have found this is the recipe. I've played around with it. I'm just of that nature. I don't tend to take good advice. I tend to, think things out for myself and try things out. I've found this is the right balance of ingredients, right? And that's why you're always going to have more sponge. When you add you take your starter out of the fridge, you add some flour and some water to the starter, and you let it go overnight. You're going to have probably more starter than you need to make the waffles. So you take 2 cups of starter out to make your waffles, and you use the remainder to make a loaf of bread, or 2 loaves of bread, or 3 loaves of bread, depending on how much industry and initiative you have. So you're doing 2 things with one go. You're making waffles, you're making bread, you're making everybody happy. Everyone's going to be happy with what you've done, because waffles are delicious. I mean, it's like a waffle is a pancake on steroids. A waffle is a pancake that's been designed with little pockets to hold syrup, and this particular recipe, because of the nature of sourdough and the flavor it brings to things, because you're in the same way that yogurt is something better than milk, right? You're taking milk, adding something to the milk that grows and makes the milk something nice that tastes great. You're doing the same thing with your flour by adding sourdough starter to your, this is just a basic, enriched white flour type flour, right? You're taking basic flour and you're adding this living thing to the flour, and you're changing it, and you're getting flavor and nutrition and all that other good stuff. I'm not saying that waffles are nutritious. They're not. but it tastes good. It tastes really good. So the clock just turned over to 128. I'm going to have a look and see what we got here. Yeah, looks good to me, right? And it popped right out. Right, so we only needed to put a little bit of butter, fake butter, on the iron for the first batch. Every other batch is good. When this waffle maker was brand new, none of that was needed. It's just one of those things, right? If in an ideal world, all waffle makers, in my opinion, would be cast iron. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Flip. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, I don't know why I just counted there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Flip. All right, we'll give that another 4 minutes. The clock's at 1:29. I'm going to wait until 1:33 to pop these out. Should be fine. We're almost done. So another thing when you're doing this is, if you're trying to make an extraordinary breakfast experience for your family, every waffle should be warm and crispy on the outside, in my opinion. Golden brown, crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, not doughy. Just that fantastic, you get a crunch, but you also get a chew, all that sort of stuff, right? While this is all happening, if you have an oven and you want to go the extra step, you set your oven. My oven has a setting it's got a button called Keep Warm. So I press the Keep Warm button, and I take the waffles I've made, and they're all in the oven while this is all happening, and it's keeping them warm. What's the keep warm temperature? Just so you know, it's 170 degrees Fahrenheit. My oven, I'm in Canada, we're a Celsius country, but our ovens are in Fahrenheit. So Canada's a weird country. We've got certain things that are Celsius, certain things that are Fahrenheit. So 170 Fahrenheit, you put these in the oven or keep warm, right? And it'll just do that great job of having them warm enough that when you put some butter on them or whatever, it melts in, right? And it just sort of allows them to continue to be great. These are just perfect right now. They're sort of hard on the outside and they're soft on the inside, just the way you want them. This is like, if I want to make my kids happy, if I want to reward them for, whatever some action that's desirable, this is the motivation. And these aren't perfect. So you can see this one, some of the sections are empty, but that's fine, because that's better than having the thing spew out stuff out the side and make a huge mess, right? So I find this approach works. You're going to have to figure it out for your waffle maker, its volume, how much it wants. For me, it's like half a cup, throw it in, but don't be too fussy about how much of the actual liquid goes in. All right, it's been about 4 minutes. Let's have a look. Yeah, totally ready. And my memory card got full during while these were cooking, so I actually went a little bit over that 4-minute limit. But again, notice we haven't had to use the an extra dose of butter. So now the amount in the container, the bowl is so low that I can't get a full cup. So I'm going to have to eyeball this. Just make a little guess. I'm going to assume that's a half cup. And I'll just use the spatula and get everything else out for the next batch here. Hopefully that's enough. So, this makes how many? 8. I'm just going to double check that. I'm going from memory here. This doesn't really fill it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it makes like 7 and change. Almost 8, but not quite 8. So this one's going to come out a bit weird, but that's life, right? What are you going to do? So, yeah. I'm going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give her a flip. That's it. All right. So I'll see you in a couple minutes. We'll try one of these babies, and I'll see you in about 4 or 5 minutes, and we're going to try one of these things. All right. So it's been about 4 minutes. I'm just going to pop these out of the waffle maker. The last ones always come out a little bit weird. That's fine, because the only people that eat these are the ones that are so hungry they don't care. Right, this one came out okay, but the sort of one that didn't have enough is like that. All right, so yeah. In terms of flavor, if you have ever been to something resembling a country fair where they are making homemade donuts from scratch, that's what these smell like. The whole house, it smells like you're at a fair and someone's making fresh donuts from scratch. If you've ever experienced that in your life, it's the most wonderful thing. And using such basic ingredients, egg, fat, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm just using, sure, I could get a highbrow and use maple syrup and all sort of stuff, but honestly, Aunt Jemima original is totally fine for my taste. But yeah, let's have a bite. Yeah, this, if you have sourdough starter and you're concerned about how am I going to use it all up, what am I going to do with it, this is the way to make the best use of that. Everybody in your house will love you. Everyone will be happy. It's so good. It's basically a cake. You've made a cake and you're putting syrup on the cake. It's really, really good. So yeah, use the oven to keep everything warm and toasty. So everybody has that perfect experience of biting into a crunchy waffle that's soft in the inside. But you can also store these in your fridge. Right, you just put them on top of one another, like that. Right? You put them in the fridge or freezer or whatever, right? You store them like that. Right? Leave them out for, half an hour if you've made a lot, so they dry out a little bit. And put them in a bag, put them in the fridge. And then when it's time to make them, you just cut them in half, put them in the toaster on the lowest setting your toaster has, right? They don't take long, you're just heating them up. You could do it in the oven too, but that seems a waste of electricity. Put this one in the toaster, put this one in the toaster. Just pop them in the toaster on the lowest setting. The lowest setting on my toaster is the 1 setting, right? Stick them in like that, and you've got an easy breakfast that makes everybody happy. So, yeah, waffles. A great way to use up your sourdough starter. A great way to enjoy the simple pleasures in life. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.